It's a very special day. Well, we're 2 days removed from a very special day.
Tell me more, David.
Yes.
2 years ago, on November 20th, 2019. We published, myself and Skylar, our very first episode together, Bad Faith Darrell.
Aww.
Yeah. So a very important time for the Voices world. And I just wanted to take a moment for that. Can you believe that? 175 almost episodes later, and like look at where we all are today.
Aww.
The podcast is a toddler.
Yeah.
That's when we get
on-
sassy.
This is welcome to the terrible twos. You thought we were bad before,
Happy
folks.
two.
Yes.
Yeah. Get ready.
I love it.
City Council.
And I should say that, as we know, Skylar has moved on to bigger and better things. By the way, he didn't think he was going to be a host of the show. And
he just thought he was going to produce it.
Yeah. And I just showed up at his place and I was like, well, no, I'm not going to talk to myself. Like, no, let's do this together. And he was like an original, in our second iteration of Voices, he was an original host of that from that day on.
Yeah.
And he is now in, municipal government.
I love that so much.
Which brings me to my next
part of the
topic.
machine.
Yeah. I just don't know, will Voices last forever? There's a cat on PJ's shoulder. I can't even focus.
I am so sorry. You just
I looked away for I blinked and there was suddenly a big orange cat on you.
And I was like, this is my nightmare. I just entered my nightmare.
He sleeps all day. And then now is when he's like, hey, let's pet.
Time to wake up.
My nightmare is for there to be a big orange cat on my shoulder.
Your cat ruined the delivery of my joke.
Okay. We'll just Skylar will cut this part out. Just
Not
do it
even
again.
joke anyway. Okay. So, how long will any of us be a part of Voices? How long will Voices even be a thing, right? We all have our day that we die.
Yes.
And I just saw something online today and I was like, well, Skylar went the route of municipal government and I saw this and I'm like, this is a good opportunity. So I want to be the first to announce that I believe I'm going to apply for Director of Communications for the Sacramento City Manager. Howard Chan.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'd be great at it.
Listen, I don't think you'd be bad at it. The question is, would they even bother reading your application, let alone
Right in the trash.
calling you back for an interview?
Howard, baby, if I was on your staff in June of this year, just imagine how things would have gone differently, how the public discourse would have gone. We would have had that restraining order against Skylar in 2 seconds. That's my pitch.
No
to
things.
That's not where I expected that to go, but okay. All right. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Is this what it is? Make your enemies your friends? Have them switch sides?
My approach is a little more nihilistic in that nothing matters and then we're all going to die.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, Howard, expect that in the mail real soon. That's not a threat. I'm applying for your job. We gotta word our things carefully here when we mention Howard on this show.
Yes.
But yeah. Happy 2
awesome.
years to the new iteration of Voices. And Howard, we will be here as long as you are.
what that means.
All of
but
it
it's
sounds like
hilarious.
threats now. I love
Is
it.
that a threat? Nothing's a threat.
We'll be here until you're gone.
Hello, Howard.
I
All right,
was
whatever.
like, I don't even know what it means, and it was funny.
Let's just start the show.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
Oh, and Flo. I'm so used to there being somebody else before me, but I was like waiting, and then I was like, oh shoot, I got to jump in here. Sorry about that double.
What's my name? What's my name?
What's my
And
name?
PJ.
Yeah, well, in order of primacy, PJ as one of our newest hosts, like you chime in at the end here. So
Yes.
Flo's used to be in last,
I am in last.
but now look at us growing.
I know, I love it. Hi,
Growing
PJ.
into our twos.
Hello.
Yeah, so Kempa, Flo, PJ, excited about this trio of hosts today. Skylar's, who knows what Skylar's doing? Do we even ask these days? I don't know.
He's an enigma unto himself.
Shannon shall be back. She could not be here tonight either. Being very enigmatic about their reasons today. Like they're out, just causing trouble. Who knows? But we've got a really an episode that I'm pretty excited about today. I thought, like, well, why don't we just start it off with how are you two? Flo, you've been gone the last two episodes. PJ, I haven't had you on. We haven't had you on in like over a month possibly. So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I get to listen to 2 episodes, which is really nice, and like tweet about them in the middle of the week, which was also fun. You all were trolling me during the one episode, so it's fine, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, same. It's been a bit. When you're used to the Patreon episodes, then all of a sudden it's like that gap gets bigger, and it's just like, oh, that's right, it's been a bit.
Yeah.
It has. Yeah, it's true. It's just one of those things where it's like when all the hosts are gainfully employed, it's really hard to pull together regular episodes. And people have things to do at night sometimes, and it's been a challenge. And I think we all kind of sat down with each other and said, no, we got to do the once a week. We will be having a Voices meetup. I don't know off the top of my head. I think we were looking at December 11th, give or take. Flo, does that sound correct?
That does sound correct.
Shannon threw the date out.
Yeah.
We'll have Skylar edited in like December 9th. At
Computer Siri voice.
TBD bar.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
It happened.
Siri go off.
No, that was Alexa because she responds to the other word.
Oh my God, the S
Oh.
word. Okay.
Yes.
Like I said earlier before we recorded, you got to change your name to Hal. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. But okay, anyway. Yeah, we've got a Voices meetup happening in the next couple of weeks. It'll be our first one in a while, so I'm pretty excited about that. Keep an eye out for that one. And I don't know, like we're going to be taking a break between give or take December 15th to January 15th. And then, I've done last year we did episodes throughout those holiday weeks, and very, very little actually happens. And we kind of were like, well, why don't we just take time to ourselves and be real good socialists and, allow ourselves to take some grace period. So we'll be doing that. Yeah. Anything else to add, folks?
No. I will be driving the California coast during part of that on a road trip. So you might want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram.
That sounds
Maybe
fun.
I'll Instagram it.
Ooh, yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
You should gram it if you're doing like US, what is that, 1?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm really excited.
I'll be doing absolutely nothing. I'm going to Reno at some point. I won't say it on the show because far-right groups follow my movements, but I'm excited about that trip to Reno. Let's start the show.
Let's do it. We have some fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
We do.
And I just find fun very different than many other people, but you know, whatever.
When I think of fun, I think of a man who doesn't speak like other politicians. A man who sits on the dais in our city council and really doesn't care to impress anyone. Or if he did, that would astound me. A man who owns multiple locations of Viva supermarkets. A man who might not even live in his district, but may in fact live in Granite Bay near his wife's dental business. I have the things to imply that, but that's not for today. Maybe we'll talk about that today, but anyway, this man is council member of District 2, Jonathan Bonathan Loloee. Yeah, initial thoughts on Sean. That's not his birth name. That's not his Christian name.
Jonathan is his Christian name.
I don't even know he's Christian.
My thoughts on Sean are that it is real. First of all, it's really surprising that he's even representing this district. And if you look at just, you know, my understanding, I haven't looked at these recently, but that, you know, each of the districts are more or less, you know, have a comparable kind of number of people living in them, is my understanding. Similar to how the county supervisor districts are split up that way too. So not necessarily land mass, but population group. And yet the voter turnout for District 2 is always much lower than it is in other places. Mm-hmm. So I bring that up because this election was decided by far fewer votes in that district than other places. And I'm still surprised that they chose him because he doesn't have any experience. He's very, very green. Like I have, committee members and commissioners who are sitting on city committees who knew more about how the city of Sacramento ran than he did when he started. And then he has become kind of this like, oh gosh, what's Sean gonna say person on the dais, because he says things that I'm like, on one hand, I appreciate your honesty, but on the other hand, like, what the fuck, man? Who says that?
Yeah, it totally. He has turned into my favorite person to hate watch during city council meetings. I adore when it's his turn to talk. I want to take a step back and give listeners a little idea. You might live in a different place in California. You might not know who he is. So Sean Loloee is the city council representative for an area in Sacramento called District 2. This is just north of the downtown central grid, Del Paso Heights area, parts of Natomas, I believe, South Natomas, and a couple other areas. And it is a historically underdeveloped area. It is an area predominantly a higher percentage of people of color live in that area, Black and brown folks, than do in other districts in the region. And they have just been profoundly underserved really throughout the history of Sacramento. And Sean, in a really surprising election last year in 2020, defeated the incumbent, whose name is escaping me right now.
Alan Warren.
Yeah.
Alan Warren. Warren was not an exciting guy by any means. Warren was not like really making huge moves to change the material conditions of his district. There were some little glimmers that Warren might have been ready to try and tackle homelessness in a new way before he was voted out. But Sean, being this business leader in the area, beat him. And it doesn't take much to beat somebody in a district where the voter turnout is so low, right? And he did. And Sean is an Iranian immigrant. He owns multiple Viva supermarkets. He really does approach politics from a business perspective. And he has, in his short tenure of like 10, 11 months on the dais at City Council, just been like a really fascinating person up there. I want to say like he's fascinating in like all of his qualities that he brings to the table. He's also fascinating in that he's just hilarious and hilarious to listen to. So that's sort of the background I was trying to give there. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty complete.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's pretty accurate.
And so Flo, you were saying like he's one of those people that like, you know, when they're talking, when he talks in city council meetings, you're like, all right, oh boy, here it goes.
Here it comes, yeah.
Yep.
What are we talking about when we say that? What sort of moments are these?
Well, you know, when he'll say things like, you know, I'm just not a fan of affordable housing. It's one of those things where it's like, affordable housing just means housing that people can afford.
Right.
So I don't know if the conclusion I'm supposed to draw is that you like it when no one can afford to be housed. Like, but those are just strange things that like you almost never hear people say out loud. Even if you're a person who isn't a fan of public housing or isn't a fan of like all of these other like nuanced way of describing it, most people are like, I'm not a fan of, you know, people having access to food. Like, that's just not my, it's like, who says that? Like,
It's not my jam.
okay. So that's what I mean by you just never know what you're going to get from Sean.
PJ,
Yeah,
I
no,
feel like you
the
want to
same.
talk.
No, I feel the same way. I mean, especially since the early days back when he conflated Antifa and white supremacists and had to basically be backed down by Steinberg to the point where he apologized later. Or, you know, it's just something different every single. There was one meeting where I was tracking what he was asking about this one vote, and he went from understanding what he was voting on to not understanding what he was voting on to explaining what he was voting on. And I'm like, oh my God, you even pay attention to yourself?
He is a joy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, he is such a joy. So yeah, well, yes, he did a couple weeks back in a city council meeting say, I am not a fan of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, in response, a member of the Sacramento Bee editorial board heard that and said, well, that's silly, and ended up writing a column on that. That's Yusuf Beg. It was a great column. And Yusuf was effectively saying, that's absurd. Everyone should be for housing that's affordable, right? Yusuf reached out to him to get a comment from him on this piece, and did not get back to him, hear back from him, and that sort of just like vibrated for a few days throughout our city. And like, I think actually, PJ, you were the one who caught that clip of that city
Yes.
council meeting. Oh,
Yes. Well, because it literally passed by so quickly that I quickly went over to like YouTube, I think, because it was streaming on the on a live channel, and recorded it real quickly because I was just like, oh my God, there's no way they're going to let this go up online, because it's just like it was too crazy. It was too bizarre.
Right.
and you caught it and posted it, and then T. Clift, who covers local politics, Teresa Clift at the Bee, sort of retweeted you, and I think that's how this sort of got up and running. Yep. My favorite thing about this is, and like There's no defending himself here. He literally said, I'm not a fan of affordable housing, right?
Yep. That's the quote. Like, he's
We later tried to say.
no, it was a preamble, if I'm recalling correctly, because he was like, everybody knows I'm not a fan of affordable housing, but and then the rest of the sentence was in there. Like, it was like, this isn't even the protein part of this sentence. This is just the preamble.
Oh, it's the appetizer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in as much as there is no defense of this, the perfect person came to his defense, and that would be friend of the show, Rita Skeeter of Sacramento, Katy Grimes.
Oh, Katy girl. Hey, girl. Hey.
Of the California Globe. And Katy is actually, she's no Rita Skeeter. She is just like a far right, wild far right pundit. Who just like runs this site called the California Globe. You might recognize the California Globe as the site that first wrote about Skylar's hire. And so Katy Grimes wrote this piece basically just defending him for hating affordable housing, which was funny because isn't in this piece, doesn't he say like, I never said that?
Yep. Yeah. And I was like, no. We have
affordable housing.
We have a video.
He said, I never said I'm against affordable housing, but when it's the only choice offered in my district, I'm not a fan of the lack of balance of housing.
Sean, baby. My other favorite thing is he claims that Yusuf never reached out to him. I have no idea who he is, Loloee said. He never tried to contact me. We went through all emails, including my staff's and spam folders, just to make sure there were no cell or phone calls either that we could find. I find that strongly difficult to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't believe that the B is printing. We reached out and you didn't get comment if they didn't reach out and didn't get comment.
Oh, yeah. Well, then, Sean, what happens is, so obviously a piece came after this a few days later in the B, another piece by Yusuf, which was obviously a ride along of Yusuf driving through Sean's neighborhood for an hour. And you know the editorial process was Sean had his comms people reach out to Yusuf and say, and CC the editors and say, this is journalism malpractice and blah, blah, blah. We didn't get to have our say. We want to have we welcome him to ride along with us throughout our district. And Yusuf did. And what was said in that piece, basically?
Are we talking about the follow-up piece around the one? Yeah. So in that one, basically, he's saying that he's trying to push businesses to stop the blight, and that essentially he's intimating that those the comments were taken out of context, and that he's doing all of these other things, and it goes back to like he's really trying to provide balance, and he wants to jumpstart the economy in the district and all of these these things that he needs to do specifically around his district, and that he basically has been sort of like misrepresented, in that one of the big things that's happening there is blight, and that is a drain on the entire community.
Yeah. So the answer to his issues, to the issues in his constituents' region is like, oh, we need money. We need capital.
He basically said, I want to bring wealth in here.
Yes.
He said this is a poor community. Yeah. He said this is a poor community. What we need is more expensive housing that they can't afford.
We need to gentrify my district.
I mean, that's the obvious conclusion when you say I'm really worried about the blight, right? It's like, and I don't believe in affordable housing. It's like I want to be able to sell. I want to be able to make this area much more prime location for wealthier people to come in, so that when you're not here, we won't have you people kind of problems. That's
right. And the Rita Skeeter piece, he basically said that we need those higher income houses to be able to afford to fix up these public goods. And it's like, well, how about we maybe, I don't know, make affordable housing for the people that already live in the district, and then talk about maybe spreading the wealth from the richer districts over to your community, so that way we're providing the same level of community support.
Yeah.
Sean's not for that.
No. One of the quotes from the second article encapsulated Sean so perfectly. He said to him, he said to the reporter, "I'm talking to the owner of this facility right now, going, hey, make it look nice from the outside."
Yep.
Nothing
Yep.
about making it livable, make
That
it look
is-
nice from the
Right.
outside.
Right.
The perfect symbol for what he wants for his district. Make it look good from the outside, right? So yeah, so I mean, these three pieces were written, and like, I mean, I don't know, like this stuff happens on and off with Sean, and he is a very enjoyable city council member in that regard. But this past city council week was a very important one. A lot of people were paying attention to it. I'm talking about Tuesday of last week. What was the date there? I can't even.
That was November 16th.
November 16th, in which Mayor Darrell Steinberg introduced the idea of his right to housing plan. And that has all sorts of issues, and we can get into that. And maybe we can get into that now, but Sean was just on point during this one too. Like there was a topic before that big one came up where it was discussing like potential. Go ahead, Flo.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say it was when they talked about how they were shutting down some of the streets to do the slow streets thing, and it was like there were mixed feelings about it in the communities, and I think I remember him responding to that as well in a really strange way about like why we're doing this and whatever else. So he had a few little zingers along the way leading up to what was going to be the big item on the agenda that night.
Yeah, I don't think I skipped through that part, so I didn't catch that one. I was talking about the sort of initiative to reconcile the relationship between the police and communities of color.
Also
and like,
that item, yes.
Yeah, I mean, as
We're from
police abolitionists on this show, we don't really agree with any of that anyway, but like the funniest thing was like when the two youngest council members who have never taken cop money, Katy Valenzuela and Mai Vang, were saying like, well, you know, there's a real trust gap between community members and cops, and Loloee just like going hard, being like,
Right.
you know, I'd push back on that. I think the community does trust the cops. I would also say, you know, getting to know our city, if you look at Sacramento media, there's no positive stories about cops in the news.
Yes. And he went on to say that they're all of them are basically these hit pieces, and nobody's saying nice things about the police, and they're not all bad. And I would push back that there is a problem between the community and the police department, because that's just not true. And it's like, okay, Sean, sure.
Sean, baby.
Sure thing.
Yeah, so I mean, there was another amazing one too at the end where he was like going on about something, and I think somebody else on the dais commented like, it's been 4 hours. Like but yeah, so and then like obviously the mayor presented the right to housing piece. Feel free, let's like just give our thoughts on that real quick too. What is the right to housing initiative or legislation, or however you put it, ordinance that the mayor is trying to push through?
It basically sets up a right to housing for people who are unhoused and requires that they accept housing if they've been offered at least 2 different types. And then beyond that, will penalize them if they do not accept it. And that's about it, because it doesn't really set up any standards for the city and what it's to provide, and making sure that there are some metrics in place to ensure that what they are going to be given is something that they actually need and that works with their situation.
Yeah. And it talks about like safe and dignified housing without defining what either of those mean. Granted, this is the first draft, so I will allow that, there may be additional definitions that will show up when it, is in its final form. But it just, the thing to me about this that always strikes me as odd for Darrell is that he always wants to do too many things at once. So why couldn't we just establish the right to housing and say we are making a commitment that we are going to aggressively invest in having all of the housing options? And then once you do that well, right, because we know that's going to take some time, then you come back to us with the bullshit about, whatever. And we can think about these differently, because what most callers called it and said is, I agree with the right to housing. What I'm having a problem with is this part that's supposed to come after that. And I'm like, separate them. This is the same conversation we had about Measure A. It's the same conversation we had about, the creation of this Department of Community Response and all the other stuff that was listed under one item on that agenda. It's like, stop trying to make us swallow everything at once. Break these things up because they're not the same, and start with the thing that we all agree on. And then you may find later that the thing you're trying to do doesn't actually make sense because it's just trying to criminalize people who are experiencing homelessness, which is what I think the major issue is. Or you may find that other issues arise or you don't get this, whatever, but like, to force people to have to decide, like, am I really, do I now have to call in and say, yeah, I don't like your right to housing bill? Like, that feels terrible to lots of people. And if you really care, there's an easy win in this, at least at the local level, I think, that there's not at the state level yet, because Newsom did veto the bill to establish the right to housing because he said it costs too much. So Darrell's out here with his proof of concept trying to say we can do this, but then it comes with all this other stuff that nobody asked for.
Well, it could have been caught early on if he had just engaged. But he didn't, and he always does this. He comes with this idea that he thought up, that he thinks is God's gift to everybody, without ever engaging any of the affected parties to ensure that there's nothing that he's missing, because he thinks he has it. And it's just like, no, this is never going to work. You need to understand that there are situations that these people have been fighting with the city over a long period, and all you're having is more of the same type of not lack of recognition of what they need that isn't being provided, and then acting as though if they don't accept that, or they're not okay with this perpetual abuse, that they're in the wrong somehow.
Right.
I'm going to go a little off my usual track here, and I'm going to try and give Darrell Steinberg some credit.
Okay.
One, when people swore at him, especially formerly,
The first call.
Yeah, I don't know if this person was currently unhoused or formerly for a number of years. They went hard at Darrell, and he didn't respond. He did not do the decorum card, and 2 years after bad faith Darrell, like, that is to his credit. Like, that's good. And like, that is what's needed from folks who definitely do not fucking trust you, right? From folks who've had to, as this person was saying, I think their name was Lilith, I believe, something like that. Like a really powerful comment. They've tried to navigate the system. It was a nightmare, trauma every day for them. Like, this is why people are mad. And this is why people don't trust, not just you, it's anybody on the dais, right? And like, you have to have the humility to not respond to that. And I'm astounded that he did, kind of.
Same.
It's because you've been doing yoga with him for the past 2 years.
It must be.
So he's now centered and feeling good about things. So, that really, that helped.
But the trust element, it's something that a lot of commenters brought up. It's something that both Katy and Maya up on the dais tried to center during that discourse. And it's something that's really important. And the problem with this proposal is the compulsory element of, if you don't accept what we give you, we're going to make you do something, right? And that immediately, any trust that was there just dissolves immediately.
Well, the lack of requirements on the government side too. Like you need to provide something that people will want to take before you can put any onus on them. And you
Right.
didn't, you just didn't provide that.
Yeah. Well, and so here's what I think Darrell's trying to do. And I think actually I was suspecting it the whole way. And then when I heard Angelique Ashby, who's District 1, say something about who our partners really are, right? I think that showed the full hand in that I think Steinberg knows that, I hope he knows that the advocates who study this stuff front to back are the correct people here, right? That housing first and building trust is the only way this works, right? And it has to be affordable, permanent supportive. It has to be, you know, it has to meet people where they are. I don't think he thinks that this is possible or that this will pass without the buy-in from these shitbag business owners or the PBIDs, right? The business districts who went on and they said, well, I tentatively support as well, but my issue is, you know, I just don't want it to affect my district. I just blah, 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 right? And he's trying to make everyone happy still. And I just don't think that that's how this works, right? I mean, this is a class war thing. Like we have to be fighting our billionaires in this state and in this country. And Gavin Newsom vetoing this last year was him saying that Democrats will not only not fight against the billionaires, they will support the billionaires in not supporting public or social housing.
That is exactly the problem, though, with Darrell, unfortunately, is that Darrell comes from a time where, and comes from a philosophy where it's a both sides, try to meet everybody in the middle kind of thing, right? And that makes you seem, you know, effective. And that sounds like it's a good thing. But the problem is when it's like balancing these interests as if they're equal, right? It's the same thing we always talk about, you know, with the media, Dave, you know, because that's your background of like, when you put Jenny McCarthy up against trained virologists and they both are talking about, you know, vaccines and whether or not they cause autism, you make it seem as if they both got 30 seconds or a minute in the segment. You make it seem as if these two things are the same and I don't know which one we should listen to. So we're giving you both, like, he does that with his policy. It's like the people who are merely inconvenienced by this are as important of stakeholders in this community as the people whose lived experience is being shaped, the people who are dying on our streets. Right. And that's how you end up with legislation like this. He does this with every issue, though, with racial equity. He's really out here trying to say, how do we address racism and keep white people happy at the same time? That's not how this works. Yeah. You're not going to get to good answers if you're trying to keep white people happy while you are addressing racism. Like that just like that can't be a goal, right? And I'm not saying you start with like how many white people can I piss off today, although it's not a bad place to start.
Right? Like what's my limit for how many I can safely piss off?
Right, but you start with like, how do I do good on this issue? And then you figure out who you can get on board and how you, but like to start with, I'm balancing all of these, you're not gonna get to good answer. You're gonna end up with legislation like this. And so Darrell has to decide, is he gonna be the meet in the middle moderate who doesn't really want to do anything, but wants to get credit from everybody for having done more than someone else? Or does he actually want to make a difference on this issue? And I would just say to him, he's over 60. He has had a life where he has made ample money to be able to, you know, retire well and enjoy the last third of his life. And I would say now's the time, if you were doing all
that
this
sounds
to
like
build
a threat.
up your influence. No, I'm just saying the last third of his life, I'm giving it to 100. Like
in these last days, Darrell.
Like Darrell, you and I will be in AARP together, okay? You will be, you know, You will be a couple decades ahead of me. We will be on AARP together. I'm just saying, like, in this phase, you've built up, you were the Senate pro tem, you built up this national, following and influence. You're now at a place where use that, I don't want to say weaponize that, but use that for some good that doesn't propel you to the next thing, that isn't a both sides analysis, that actually puts you out there fighting for the right fight and not fighting against the people that you claim you care so much about. That's what I would say. And I would hope that this time he listens when we say, split these things apart and start with the good stuff and then figure out the rest of that, which the subtext being don't do it later.
His approach to this has been really interesting to me. When you listen to his rhetoric on the meeting, when he's introducing this idea, he's using some like fully socialist rhetoric, communist rhetoric, right? Like housing is a human right. Like we should all be able to have housing, it should not be market-based at all times, so I guess more socialist than communist. But when you talk with other folks who grabbed the piece of paper and read his entire proposal, that's where the focus is on the coercion element, right? The focus is on, how do I sate my rageful
Overlords.
P-bids? How do I make sure that these business leaders who I'm going to have to ask for money to make this thing work, how do I make them feel comforted that the coercive arm of the law, the coercive arm of capital in our region will do their bidding when it comes down to it? And I think that's a fascinating view of him kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth through two different media, right? Knowing full well who are the listeners and viewers on one and on the other one.
Yep.
Well, I mean, anyway, did Sean say something funny during that?
Not that I remember.
Yeah.
I think
thought
we were
he
so
did.
focused on the frustration over the fact that he just wasn't willing to provide good enough housing, good enough services, that there would never be a chance that anyone would refuse that. As evidenced by the fact that our shelters and facilities are full every night. Clearly, the refusal of services is not a thing. And so if you provide what they need, you're good.
Yeah. I do recall Sean, like, honestly, Loloee's comment during that wasn't as funny as his comments and other things, but I do think it was along the lines of the usual business person, which is like, hey man, I care about the homeless, right? That's always, the way they say it.
But I also care about the homeowners and the businesses.
Yeah, they say that too. And then they're like, but we don't know what the answer is, so let's not do anything, right? And so I don't know, like, obviously there's some real big fucking problems with what Dare Bear is presenting here, but like, it also kind of like, if something like this were to pass, at least it gives us an idea of what our next fight is. And like,
Yes.
Mark Maron will be chomping at the bit. Like, yeah, like, try me if you want to give me an opening to sue the city, because I'm happy to.
Yeah, I went back to our group text to see what was happening in real time when this was happening. And I do remember he went on this bender about gas prices. Just like
This was Sean?
yes, this was
Yeah.
Sean.
Oh my
He
gosh.
went on this whole thing about how we're all in danger and the gas prices are up and this, that, and the other. We were trying to figure out why this was a part of the conversation at all.
My commute from Granite Bay.
Right. That also that, yeah. But he basically was just kind of saying like, we don't really, like, why even go down this rabbit hole? We don't really want to fix this problem. I mean, that was the subtext to his comments.
Right, basically. And with folks like that, I mean, it's a non-starter. It's a continuation of what we've been doing. It's a right-wing neoliberal approach to homelessness where the business owners have all the say and nothing ever happens. It's Kevin Johnson era homelessness.
And he's been on that pretty consistently during his time on the dais. Like, he has said that we're not thinking about this realistically because we're not considering the homeowners and we're not considering the people who are inconvenienced by people experiencing homelessness.
Mm-hmm. And the answer to all of this is to continue to demonize these people, because this is horrific that they would, argue this way. And the answer is that housing is a human right. And it's astounding to me to see the dais change its position on housing as a human right in 2.5 years. They're nowhere near where they need to fucking be, but like, it's kind of wild to me to see them shift as quickly as they have. And I think that's in huge part to Katy, maybe in some part to Mai too. And I think that's really important, that like, we still got to fight all the bastards, but like, it kind of feels like the goalposts have moved a bit.
Oh yeah. Well, the nice thing is that I was on the people's budget chat while that city council meeting was happening, and everyone was just like, we were happy because everyone was like, yeah, DCR needs more funding. DCR needs more funding. And we're like, fucking told you that. We told you that. We wanted 10 million. You gave them 5 million. Yeah, they need a lot more funding. Guess where you're going to get it from?
That's the Department of Community Response, which has been tasked to deal with most 911 calls surrounding
311 calls, rescuing cats, everything.
Yeah, folks experiencing homelessness, anything that's not like a true physical threat crime, which basically relieves the police of responding to that. And so somebody with a gun is not responding. It's a person who hopefully and ostensibly will be trained in defusing a situation as opposed to escalating it. So yeah, moments like that is really heartening. Can I move us on to like one final topic?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, do you all know who the president of SEIU Local 1000 is? It's a man. And that man's name is Richard Lewis Brown, AKA Richard the Real. Now, for those of you who don't know, R.L. Brown, like he's run for president. And well, SEIU Local 1000, it's a union that represents like over 100 or nearly 100,000 workers throughout the state. Dues paying members are a little under half that, I think, but they fight basically for those workers' interests, right? They've had their ups and downs. The SEIU Local 1000 is a good sort of storyline of like, if you don't make your politics local a priority, then like things will happen and, things can go upside down pretty fast, which is why it's important to stay in tune with your city council, with your union structure, with like all of your different things locally, right? Basically what happened with SEIU Local 1000 is there was some, there was a president for a long time who some folks really liked, a lot didn't. And when the last elections came around, this random dark horse candidate came through, this guy who ran a couple times. He would do these kind of like fun little like selfie videos where he just talk about the issues. But he was like also sort of a, how would you put it? He just like, there's some sort of like, there's like a populism to the way he approaches things and the way he gets people excited and mad. But like his policies don't necessarily make sense. He claims that he can get everyone in the union a 21% raise, things like that. He wants to take his union out of politics. There's a number of things in there that like it's hard to like make sense of them necessarily. But he ended up winning this election with a plurality of the votes. And I forget how many exactly, but
it's like 2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah, this is
low.
It was something low. It was maybe like 30% of the vote or 30 something percent. And it's a good argument for having within your union 2-round elections where you don't win with a plurality. It's a top 2 election system, perhaps. But that's not my purview. Anyway, he won. He was this guy who said, like, you know, he was anti-vax. He called himself the vaccine. He's got like these theories about numbers. I think it's like 7347 is this number he's obsessed with. And he always like incorporates it into like his discussions. He's like a fascinating, but also not a person I'd want running my union.
Agreed.
And he's basically
just glad he didn't whip out the phrenology.
Yeah, well, he's basically been fighting to kind of neutralize his own union, which a lot of labor folks have been watching this from the outside and very disturbed by. So he did a bunch of things. He refused to hold meetings with the union. So eventually the board came together and held a meeting without him, which is against the rules. And then they changed the bylaws. So basically he's now just like he's just like one of the other board members now. There's a huge power struggle happening. After that, he decided to release all of the credit card transactions from leadership over the last, like, I don't know, 6 years or so, right? And this was a few days ago, 3 days ago or so. But in this dump, it included his first few months of transactions. And that included over $6,000 or $3,000 of transactions. And the very first transaction on his credit card was $3,000 at a place called Daily Beauty Management Spa. And it's based out of, where's it based out of? It's based out of Irvine. And so people are asking questions. A lot of people are. And he did a little live feed today, and he loves to do his live feeds, but he cut this live feed pretty short, I think, based off of this pushback. And I just wanted to share real quick this little clip. I clipped it and then I put it online. Let me share it with the crew here. Why is it not coming up?
I was like, I thought it was in, oh, maybe it's not. I was like, I thought there was something Spring Medical Clinic, Sacramento.
Yeah, there was that too. That was the second one.
Okay.
And I can actually share that in a second too. Let me share the clip real quick.
Thank you. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the credit card charges that's been put up on our website because we're a transparent union. And I know a lot of questions are coming up, but you know what? Listen, it's the holiday season. We can always answer those questions later. We can always get to that later. The most important part right now is for us to come together.
I love it. So he's like, listen, I know you're hearing about this spa, $3,000, my first week of work, but it's the holidays.
I'm looking at this man and I have no idea where that $3,000 went. Because I mean, I know treatments are high if you're getting like massages, if you're getting like hot stone treatments, if you're getting a cut and color, if you're getting a perm, a massage, multi-hour massage. Let's not talk about that. I don't see that. $3,000, that would take so much work.
That's a lot of money. Was it like a residential thing where he was there for like multiple days and got multiple services done? Because I can't like a 90-minute massage, which is usually the longest you can. Sometimes you can find 2 hours, but like 90 minutes to 2 hours is like the longest you can find, and usually those don't exceed like $300.
Yeah.
Maybe $350. I'm struggling, and these are at like higher end spas, so I could see a markup being maybe even $500 for if you were to do a 2-hour massage. I'm struggling to get to $3,000 at a spa.
I looked at their pricing.
Did he wax everything and just like what's
Just
happening
the
here?
full treatment.
Right.
There's expensive spas out there. I think it's possible to get like nearish 3,000 pretty easily at some of those, but like that's not this spa. It's a very small one. It had like 5 reviews that I've found so far on the internet. Also, its 2 websites are no longer working. And I've looked up the who is on like who owned those URLs. You can't find it. Like I just can't find it.
Were you able to find it on the Wayback Machine to see what it showed before?
No, but I should have done that. Ooh, that's my next thing I'm gonna do.
So is this
Here.
a drug fry? Is that what? 'Cause that's always my go-to. For when a business doesn't seem to be like doing a thing that makes sense, or like, you know, they're like a restaurant, but they're open from like 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. every other Wednesday, and yet they're open through like significant downturns, and like a major restaurant and that's like always busy can't stay open. And I'm like, how are you doing this? There's never anyone in here. You're barely open. Like this has to be money laundering, right?
Yep.
So that's my number one thing. When I see stuff like that, I'm like, is this real?
Let me chime in here. So the Bees labor reporter picked this up towards the end of the day on Monday, November 22nd, and said that this address is also linked to a private investigator service. So like the number actually here, let me share the screen again. Let me open this up.
I'm done with this.
Gonna share this. Do you see this? This is the top of his statement. Now, this is publicly available, so I'm not doxing anyone. This is on the SEIU Local 1000 website.
Right.
But that DBM thing and then those numbers after it, that's the phone number.
Right.
And that's Daily Beauty Management. You call the number, they will say, hi, you've reached Daily Beauty Management, right? So stopping the share. Now, this is a thing that ostensibly still exists. It's possible that his money went to that, but there's also another business associated with this address. And this business is a private investigator, a guy named Derek J. Taylor, DBM private investigator, and
beauty spa.
So like, did someone go to the spa there, or did he hire a private investigator? And like this guy, listen to this guy. He's served 25 years as a federal agent with the Department of Homeland Security. Those are, of course, not really the closest friends of the show. After my tenure with DHS, I served 3 years as the personal security specialist to Elon Musk at SpaceX. I specialize in asset and bank account searches, background searches, criminal and civil investigations. My company is based in Irvine, and I service the entire state of California. So I'm wondering if he hired a private investigator using SEIU Local 1000 money.
Maybe looking into his fellow board members.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an ongoing story, but I love this story.
I have no words.
I'm sure the membership will just let it drop.
I have no words for this. This is the level of like just nonsense that I just don't have like no words.
The thing for me is like, did Richard just pave the way for him to have to leave office by publishing all of this stuff?
Like, why wouldn't you check that first? I don't understand that.
Flo's face. Oh, listeners, you're missing out.
Words, they don't come.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll learn more on this, but I just thought this just came up today. I had no idea about any of this until like the morning of Monday, the 22nd. But I was like, what a weird story. There will be a board meeting early in December, including both Richard and the board members, which he hasn't convened a board meeting since he took office, which is part of his issues with this board. And so it's going to be fascinating and people should tune into that. And I'm sure the Voices crew will be doing the same.
So, speaking of tuning in, Dave, how might I find ways to be able to tune into updates on this story and other local things that are happening in Sacramento?
That's a great question, Flo, and I'm glad you asked it. There are many ways to tune in. One of them being that every Tuesday evening after work on your drive home, you can find us on 103.1 Cuts FM, Cuts. And every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. on your way into work, if that's the way you prefer to listen to us. They might have to bleep out a few bleeps, but otherwise it's the same show. Yeah. Otherwise, we're doing a show every Tuesday, and you can find us anywhere you can find a podcast. Of course, we publish everything on voicesrivercity.com. You can watch us on YouTube, Voices River City. We're building a kind of a big following there, which I really like. You can, of course, find us on Facebook, Voices River City, Twitter and Instagram at Voices River City. The Instagram is super funny. We have a store for all of you holiday kiddos, voicesrivercity.com/shop. You can get a t-shirt, a mug, a koozie for your White Claw. Who knows? What else you want? A sticker? We got those too. Let us know what you need. We'll make you a tote. I don't know. We're going to do the meetup around December 11th. Edit that in if that's incorrect. And that's about it. I'm looking forward to my Thanksgiving. I hope all of you listeners are too. You can find me on Twitter at Youkempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
You can find me at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE. And you can find Shannon at Shan ND Stevens. And you can find Skylar at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
And I am at AOL Bites.
Is it Bites with an I or a Y?
I, yes.
Okay. Good. Well, now we all know how we can be found. And I hope you all find yourselves in loving situations with family and friends this holiday week, even if you don't support this horrific holiday. At least there are days off where you can be with friends. And we will see you next Tuesday.